I'm going to gavel this in. All right, good afternoon. You don't have to rise, Steve. But thanks for letting me borrow your gavel. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Mike Liberty. I'm Governor Doug Ducey's General Counsel. What I'd like to do first is allow everybody on our panel to introduce themselves to you and explain a little bit about what they do.
Good afternoon. Katie Fisher, Governor Ducey's Director of Legislative Affairs.
Hi, I'm Patrick Patak, the Governor's Press Secretary.
Hello, my name is Kate King. I'm Governor Ducey's Deputy General Counsel.
Good afternoon. I'm Gretchen Martinez. I'm Governor Ducey's Deputy Chief of Staff for Budget and Policy.
Okay, the next item we'd like to cover are the most important, and it's thank yous to the people who have helped make this happen. I want to first begin by thanking Presiding Judge Charles Gertler for helping coordinate this today, and also Kip Anderson from the Mohave County Board of Supervisors, or excuse me, Mohave County Administrator, and then Bob Lawless, also the Security Manager, Bob Lawless. Kip, did I get your title right? I'm sorry. The Court Administrator. Okay, I apologize. I should know that by now. And thank you to thank you to the Board of Supervisors for allowing us to use their auditorium for this program. This is something new that we've started doing, actually started doing it last week. Governor Ducey, under our Constitution, appoints judges of the Superior Court in counties with persons less than 250,000 people. And these appointments are made as vacancies come up in the middle of a term. Because as all of you know, that these judges are elected during the general election, but if something were to happen where a judge retires or resigns or gets promoted to another court midterm, there's a vacancy, and then the governor is required to appoint a new judge for that vacancy. Typically, what we have done as a staff over the last 2.5 years is hold interviews in Phoenix at the Capitol for judges for these sorts of vacancies. But what we've decided to do, because right now we have actually 3 pending vacancies in 3 different counties. In addition to Mohave County, we have vacancies in Yavapai County and Yuma County. What we decided to do was involve the public and perform these interviews in a public setting and allow you to see some of the questions that we ask as a staff of judicial applicants and how we interact with them before the governor makes his appointment. And what we also wanted to do was give the public an opportunity to provide their comments on the process and on the applicants and any other matter that the public feels compelled to make at the end of these interview sessions. So once we go through the interviews, I think probably in about an hour, we will open up the floor to public comment. So with that being said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Judge Gertler to make some opening remarks of his own.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Charles Gertler, the presiding judge in the county. I would first like to thank our panel, a very distinguished panel from the governor's office, for making the trip up here to Kingman. In particular, I would like to thank Mike Liberty and Kate King. They have been the contact people from the governor's office. They have been very responsive to our inquiries, very quick to return calls, and have kept us abreast of the procedure that we're going to utilize today. The procedure is very much like what the appellate commission, how they handle the matter. In other words, when someone is looking to go to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, there's a commission that would interview applicants, send a list to the governor, and the governor would make a decision with respect to someone appointed to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals. This process is very similar to what happens with the appellate processes, and is a very prime example of the transparency that Governor Ducey has brought to the office. So with that, I would like that you please take our gratitude and thanks back to Governor Ducey for the staff coming here to complete the interviews, for the transparency, and people aren't here to listen to me. I would like to thank Judge Kahn, congratulate him on his retirement and his service of 31.5 years on the bench. And other than that, we'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Gertler. The next item on the program that we have is a presentation for Judge Stephen Kahn. And for that, I'd like to recognize Kate King.
Hello. We are here due to the retirement of, due to a vacancy on the Mohave County Superior Court created by the retirement of Judge Stephen Kahn. And for that reason, I am pleased to be here today to read the governor's commendation that he's issued to thank Judge Kahn for his service. So the commendation reads, "Be it known to all that I, Douglas A. Ducey, Governor of the State of Arizona, do hereby offer my sincere appreciation to Judge Stephen Kahn in recognition of his service to the community as a judge on the Mohave County Superior Court for over 30 years and as the presiding criminal judge. Your enduring commitment to the judiciary and the legal profession is notable, including distinguished service as a judge, as a member of the Arizona Capital Case Commission, and as Chief Deputy of the Mohave County Attorney's Office. On behalf of the citizens of Arizona, thank you and best wishes in your future endeavors. Signed, Governor Douglas A. Ducey." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Judge Kahn. All right, next we'll begin our interviews. Mr. Moss, would you like to approach the table? So let me explain a little bit about how this will work. We have 10 questions. Each one of us will get the opportunity to ask you a couple questions. After that is finished, you'll have the opportunity to provide any remarks that you'd like, either a closing statement or maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself, issues that we may not have covered. It'll be your time and it'll be up to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liberty and members of the panel.
Okay, thank you. Katie, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Why do you want to be a judge?
My third grade yearbook, when it asked what you want to be when you grow up, and I said I wanted to be a soldier and a lawyer. And I've followed that plan my entire life. As far as I'm concerned, being a Mohave County Superior Court judge is just a progression of that trend. If you want to think of it this way, it's akin of getting your colonel's bird colonel in the Marine Corps. It's a recognition of what you've done professionally. It's a recognition of what you've done within the community. And I've always tried to give back very much in both those endeavors. And I believe, because of the current makeup of the bench, I would be the far best fit for that particular position right now.
Thank you.
Who is your judicial role model, and how has he or she influenced your judicial philosophy?
The most immediate judicial role model I have is sitting behind my right shoulder, Charles Gertler. He hired me here 21 years ago, and when it comes to my judicial philosophy, there was a lot of red ink on my early associate paperwork that I submitted for his review, which is short and concise, don't stray. We analyze the law and the facts, and we don't interject our personal viewpoints into the decisions which are before us. So because of his guidance, I think I've become the attorney I've been today. So on a personal level, he'd be my judicial role model. If you're speaking of the more generic philosophical position, I think I align more with Clarence Thomas on the United States Supreme Court. I think he is a brilliant jurist who is frequently lost in the shadows to those such as Scalia, when in his own right he's a titan, in my opinion.
Mr. Moss, how do you view the role of a judge within the framework of our Constitution?
I think the role of a judge is to be a neutral party that does not legislate and does not substitute his judgment for that of the legislature or the executive. The judge is an arbiter of disputes. Judge Langford once told me his job was the orderly administration of disputes without fear nor favor. We do not interject our personal opinions. We are there to analyze the law as written by the legislature or as previously interpreted by the higher courts, and we are to apply that law without regard to our personal beliefs or feelings.
Thank you.
How would you describe your judicial philosophy?
When it comes, from a philosophy, a constitutional standpoint, I think I'd adopt Justice Scalia's term of an originalist. It's not a strict constructionist because the Constitution says what it says, and its plain words should be interpreted to their plain meaning. We do not, on the other hand, go beyond that, in my personal view, because it is not the role within the separation of powers that we serve as a super legislature. We are there to apply what's before us fairly and impartially and without regard to our personal opinions. I may not like a particular case. I may not like what result must come from that case based upon the facts and the standing law, but it would be my obligation to reach the decision that the law calls for without that. And without that, you have a blurring of the lines between the separation of powers, and I believe that's partly that is a problem which we're still dealing with today, that judges must restrain themselves. And so I would call myself an originalist.
Thank you.
What role do you believe crime victims should play in criminal cases?
I believe they should actually play a very prominent role. Obviously, they would be witnesses and the jury would have to evaluate their credibility. But once the jury has rendered a decision as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant, I believe that it is incumbent upon the judiciary to give due consideration to the statements and desires of the victim within, of course, the sentencing guidelines and within, of course, the mitigating and aggravating factors that they would have to consider. They don't control the process, but they must be involved in the process. Frankly, it's a throwback to the old Anglo-Saxon law where crime victims were given a choice of various options when they were the victims of a crime. And I think that's important because it does restore some confidence in the judiciary when the victims believe they're being heard.
Thank you.
Mr. Moss, judicial temperament is often a defining indicator of a successful judge. What characteristics do you believe constitute good judicial temperament, and how would you apply those traits as a superior court judge?
When it comes to judicial temperament, I've always appreciated judges which are patient with those who are in pro per without becoming an active litigator on their behalf, those who are conscientious in the performance of their duties, and those who are reliable, that they are consistent. They're not all over the map from one decision or the next. I believe that if a judge can stay the course, remain even-keeled, it was a great assistance to the bar in determining what to do in an outcome to a case before it even comes to me. If a defense attorney or a prosecutor or a civil litigant has a generally understanding of Judge Moss's judicial temperament, they could use that experience in order to resolve cases more effectively and more quickly without tying up judicial resources. And it goes back also to the confidence that the public would have. If you have a judge who is erratic, does not do what he's supposed to do when he's supposed to do it, and does not control his courtroom with confidence and compassion, it would begin to undermine the public's faith and trust in that particular judge, and then, of course, the judiciary as a whole. So I believe that from the defining characterizations of a Superior Court judge is patience, compassion, reliability, and diligence. And if you are consistent in all of those, that person has an excellent judicial temperament.
Thank you.
What rule of procedure would you change, if any, and how would you change it?
I have very little heartache with the rules of procedure as they're currently enacted. If I was to tweak things somewhat, I may strengthen the requirements that extensions be supported by even stronger cause than they need to be now, because sometimes cases linger because attorneys are frequently, we look after each other, and sometimes we give extensions where we shouldn't be giving extensions, and cases that should be done in a year are done in 3 years. So maybe I would strengthen that a little bit. But again, most attorneys, in my experience, are excellent professionals. They do a very good job in managing their cases, and I really have no problem with how the bulk of the bar operates within the current procedural rules.
As you may know, if you're appointed, you'll have to run in the next general election. Would you mind sharing with us how you're prepared to do that?
I've actually run in 4 prior elections and won them all. I ran for the school board twice, won. I ran for the Board of Supervisors twice, and I won. And I think it would just be doing the same thing, but on a larger scale. I have run for election for the school board. It included Bullhead City and Fort Mohave and Mohave Valley and Golden Shores. And I've run for election as a supervisor in Fort Mohave all the way down to Lake Havasu. In one way, shape, or the form, I've already run for election in 60% of Mohave County. And so I don't think I would have a problem running for election. The approach would have to change in that judges are not politicians, we're judicial officers, and expressing legal opinions and political opinions to a large degree would have to be put on the back burner. But I think the process would be the same, it's just the approach would be somewhat different, and so I'm no stranger to that process.
Thank you.
So we have a couple hypotheticals for you, and I'm going to ask the first.
Sure.
So imagine that you're presiding over a criminal trial, and in the middle of the trial, you determine that the prosecutor has failed to disclose potentially exculpatory evidence to the defense counsel. How would you handle this situation?
At the one, you have to decide whether that failure has actually occurred and whether it's actually potentially exculpatory evidence, and so you would have to clear the jury from the room and have a conference with the attorneys as to what the actual bit of evidence is. And if it is truly exculpatory and it is truly not been disclosed and it could truly impact the case, I think the prosecutor would have a serious problem going forward at that particular point.
Thank you.
So the next hypothetical question and our final question, before I turn it over to you for any closing remarks you may have. In this hypothetical, you're presiding over a civil case. On the eve of trial, you suddenly recollect that you had a previous business relationship with one of the parties to the litigation. What, if anything, would you do?
Well, the previous business relationship and how long ago it was in the past would have a lot to say as to the end result. But regardless, the initial steps would be immediate, which is to call the attorneys and the parties together, disclose that relationship, take on board their comments, and if anyone expressed the slightest reservation, if assuming it was from decades in the past, I would recuse myself. If it was someone that I dealt business with 20 years ago and it was minor, had nothing to do with the case, and the attorneys and the parties were okay with it, that's fine. But if it was an ongoing relationship, you could not go forward at all, regardless of what the attorneys would think on that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any statement or remarks that you'd like to make?
Yes. First, I'd like to thank you for traveling. It sounds like you're touring western Arizona, and so thank you for coming out here. It's a little hotter than some other parts of Arizona. I do appreciate the chance to be interviewed by this commission. I do appreciate the fact that I was one of the final 3 to get here, and I'm greatly appreciative of that. I do think I'm the best choice to serve as the Superior Court's judge at this time. I believe my toolkit when it comes to domestic relations, dependencies, civil cases is exactly what the Mohave County Bar needs, which, in my opinion, is currently has a lot of criminal defense and prosecuting attorneys, but we need more civil attorneys to balance out the bench. I also think that my entire history, whether it's the pro bono work I've done, my soccer league work that I've done, Boys and Girls Club, Rotary, Matadors, the United States Marine Corps, my entire history has been geared to public service, and this is a continuation to that. And I would assure you that I will do my very best to be an excellent Mohave County Superior Court judge if the commission chose to advance me further in this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a point of clarification, should I recuse myself back there now, or can I stay out here in the...
You're welcome to stay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, good afternoon, Judge Wachtel Davis. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. What we'd like to do is first introduce ourselves. I'm Mike Liberty, I'm Governor Ducey's General Counsel.
I'm Katie Fisher. I'm the governor's director of legislative affairs.
Patrick Patak, the governor's press secretary.
And I'm Kate King. I'm Governor Ducey's Deputy General Counsel.
Good afternoon, Gretchen Martinez, Governor Ducey's Deputy Chief of Staff for Budget and Policy.
Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you and welcome. What we'd like to do is ask you about we have 10 questions. We'll all get a chance to ask you 2 of them, 2 each. At the end of the question period, you'll have time to provide a statement if you'd like, or cover any other topics that we may not have hit on during our question. Really, the time is yours. So with that, we could begin.
Right.
And Katie, would you like to start?
Certainly. Good afternoon.
Good
Why do
afternoon.
you want to be a judge?
Well, I've actually been a judge for almost 16 years as a limited jurisdiction judge. I've been a pro tem judge for Superior Court since 2005. So this is just sort of the next progression in my career. And I feel that I have been preparing myself to be a full-time Superior Court judge since about 2005. I handled some domestic relations cases as a pro tem, orders of protection, and then I also helped with juvenile drug court. So this is kind of the next step to become a full-time Superior Court judge.
Thank you.
Judge Davis, who is your judicial role model, and how has he or she influenced your judicial philosophy?
Well, I have several. I'm fortunate in that respect. I think the first role model I had was the judge that persuaded me to run for Justice of the Peace in 2002, and then he became a mentor of mine. Do you want names, or yes? And that was Randy Bartlett, and then he was also the presiding judge at the time. Judge Julie Roth, who did the majority of the domestic relations work here in Kingman, and also had Havasu and Bullhead City at times too. She was also another mentor judge of mine as well. I work with, in Lake Havasu, Derek Carlisle. I consider him to be a role model as well. And also Judge Gertler. He has, I'm not just saying that because he's sitting behind me. He has done an amazing job for our county and the court system, and I really admire that and all he's accomplished for us.
Thank you. What do you view, how do you view the role of a judge within the framework of our Constitution?
I think we take an oath to uphold the Constitution in Arizona and also the United States and the laws, and I think that is the judge's role, to follow the law in deciding cases, and I think that's one of our most important roles, and that's what our constituents elect us for, and they appreciate and they expect that.
Thank you.
How would you describe your judicial philosophy?
Again, I think that my philosophy is that I would hope, and I think I do, in all these years that I have been successful in 4 elections, is to make sure that our constituents, the litigants, they all have fair and equal access to the courts, whether they're self-represented or represented by counsel, that they know what to expect when they come in, that things are explained to them, that the judge is listening to them, I think is one of the key issues that people really appreciate. I have been on a committee to the time standards for case processing for the last few years, and I think that's another important, and my judicial philosophy is we just need to strive to continue to make sure that cases are handled timely and keep finding new ways to move them along, because I think that's probably one of the biggest complaints the public might have, is that it takes so long to get a case through court. So we want to make sure we continue to do that.
Thank you.
Judge, what role do you believe crime victims should play in criminal cases?
Well, that is in our Constitution, that victims have rights, and we are fortunate that we do have victims advocates that are there to help us or give input as to release conditions or sentencing. We do listen to them. I think it's a very important part, and I think that also is another reason that we need to figure out ways to move the cases along more quickly in the system, because the victims do have rights. And there are cases where it does take a long time for any resolution. Not on my level of court per se, but at the Superior Court levels sometimes. So.
Thank you.
Judge, as you know, judicial temperament is often a defining indicator of a successful judge. What characteristics do you believe constitute good judicial temperament, and how would you apply those traits as a Superior Court judge?
When I first started, and this was from my mentor, Judge, he gave me a little sticky that said, "Be calm, courteous, dignified, and respectful." I still have that sticky up on the bench. And I think those are things that we can never forget if we feel that we're getting, we're all human, so sometimes we might feel like we're getting a little agitated or something. And I help teach at New Judge Orientation for the limited jurisdiction courts, and the best advice I always give that I use myself is take a recess and get back to that mindset of being calm, courteous, dignified, and respectful. So everyone that's in front of you deserves that.
Thank you.
What rule of procedure would you change, if any, and how would you change it?
Civil or criminal, or we get to choose?
You get to choose.
I helped with the new civil rules as well, so we did change a lot of those rules to make them clearer for the litigants, especially the self-represented. So I honestly can't think of one that off the top of my head.
Okay.
You're very familiar with this, but if appointed, you'll have to run in the next general election. Are you prepared to do that?
I am.
Right.
Can I add to that a little
Sure.
bit? Yeah. The election that I first ran in and was successful, I ran against the incumbent and two other gentlemen, which was probably the toughest election I did have, but I'm very familiar with campaigning, and I grew up in Lake Havasu, so I know a lot of people there. I like to go out and speak, and I actually do that all the time, not just election years. And I did have people at the time tell me that I might as well just give up, you'll never make it. So, and then the next two elections I had opposition and was successful, 75% to 25% of the vote, and then the last one I was uncontested. So very familiar with.
Thank you.
So we have two more questions, and these two are going to be hypothetical questions. Okay?
It's like law school, huh?
It is like law school. So here's the first one. Imagine yourself presiding over a criminal trial, and in the middle of the trial, you determine that the prosecutor has failed to disclose potentially exculpatory evidence to the defense counsel. How would you handle this situation?
Well, I don't really think you can do much about that if the prosecutor doesn't bring that up. Typically, they would have defense counsel that would have to raise those issues.
So you defer to defense counsel on that?
Yes.
And the next hypothetical question, and this is our final question for the day. In this case, you're presiding over a civil case. On the eve of trial, you suddenly recall that you had a prior business relationship with one of the parties to the litigation. What, if anything, would you do at that point?
I would recuse myself.
Thank you.
Okay, Judge, thank you. That ends the question segment. Would you like to provide us with any additional thoughts or a statement of your own?
I just want to let you know that, yes, I am considered, in my view anyway, the hometown girl, Mohave County. I grew up here, did move away for about 20 years for school, law school, jobs, and moved back in '96 because this is where we want to raise our family and have raised two great children. One just graduated from college, the other one's going to be a sophomore. And so I am an empty nester now, and I feel that this is a very good time for me to take on, more challenging work. Not that I don't love what I do now, but I think the timing is really good, and I think that I've been preparing, as I said, for this position since 2005. And I have civil and criminal experience. I have been a Superior Court pro tem, again, since 2005, and I really I want to do this. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. I have heard that the position may be moved to Lake Havasu. Whether that happens or not, I'm willing to drive 60 miles to Kingman. It's not a Phoenix drive. The traffic's a little less, so it's not bad. And there's a lot of judges that have done it and still do it. And I have also heard that it might be domestic relations, probate, drug court, juvenile, which is what a lot of that I'm familiar with and have been on the bench presiding over already in the past. And I'm also not afraid to ask questions and follow what other judges are doing. No need to reinvent the wheel, get extra training in those areas that I may not be as familiar with. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for this position. And very excited about it. And whether it's in Lake Havasu or Kingman, I'm fine with either. And I have had years of experience of campaigning, so that doesn't frighten me. I even know people up in North Canyon. That's part of our jurisdiction, as you probably know as well. I know people in Bullhead, Kingman, all over. I feel like I have a good support system, and that I really want to be the next Superior Court judge for Division III. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Wachtel Davis.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay for the last interview if you'd
Okay.
like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Gretchen. Nice to meet you. Hi, Commissioner Sipe, Kate King. Thank you.
Patrick Patak. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Commissioner Sipe. We have 10 questions to ask you. Each one of us will get a chance to ask you 2 of those questions. At the end of the question segment, you'll have an opportunity to provide us with additional information as you see fit. You could give us a statement, you could tell us a little bit more about yourself. Basically, it's your time to cover whatever you'd like. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're going to begin with Katie.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Hi.
Why do you want to be a judge?
Well, I'm already a judge. So that was a pretty easy question. Next question. No, I'm just joking. I practiced law for 26 years, and probably like most attorneys, from time to time, I thought about becoming a judge. Typically, your first thought of becoming a judge is when you're really upset with the decision a judge makes. And you think to yourself, I could do a better job than this judge. I'm smarter than him. I want to be a judge. So that wasn't any motivation I ever had. Quite frankly, I never really thought about being a judge for a while. When I became an attorney, I just wanted to be the very best attorney I could be, and I never really thought about anything beyond that. After I continued to progress in my career, then I thought about taking the bench or applying for a judicial position, really not for any specific reason other than this seems to be the next logical step in a legal career. I actually haven't had that many jobs in my life, and the jobs I've had, I've always kind of moved up fairly quickly through the ranks, so I thought, well, this seems to be a logical thing to do. I believe it was 1994 that the very first commissioner position opened up in Mohave County. I applied for it. I didn't receive it. I definitely was not the best candidate for the position at that time. Judge Weiss was selected. And then thereafter, I just really settled in private practice. I really enjoyed private practice. As you know, this is my hometown, and I love providing legal services to my community. I enjoyed running my business, and I was really settled in. And then when Judge Carlisle, who had the position before I did, decided to run for an open position when a judge retired, then the wheel started to spin in my head. Prior to that, I had not thought about a judicial position for perhaps decades, because I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I was settled in. As you know, I practiced criminal law for 26 years. The position Judge Carlisle was retiring from was a criminal division, so that's what interested me. So it was a very agonizing decision. I talked to many friends, family members, colleagues, judges, retired judges, about whether or not I should leave the cozy confines of my cushy practice. After 26 years, I didn't have to take too many cases anymore and take the bench. And what really motivated me, and perhaps to answer your question, is after 26 years of being in the well of the courtroom and litigating and arguing issues on behalf of my client, I want to be the one to make the decisions. And I don't say that out of arrogance at all, but I just had a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. I had certain philosophies. I really wanted to improve the system. There's a lot of things that I saw that I believe could be improved on, and I wanted to take the helm, so to speak, as a judicial officer to start making changes and to also bring my philosophies onto the bench. So it was really, at that point, a motivation to try to make the system better, perhaps inject some new philosophies into the system. I really enjoy sentencing decisions because a lot of times I have a lot of discretion, and I can be very, I don't want to say creative, but perhaps different than the norm. I can look at every case, every defendant individually, so I just thought I could bring something new and refreshing to the bench and improve the system, so I applied and I was appointed.
Thank you.
Who is your judicial role model, and how has he or she influenced your judicial philosophy?
You asked the question in the singular mode. Do you mind if I answer it in the plural?
Please.
Because there's really more than one judge I really look up to. And I think one of them is in this audience somewhere, but Judge Rick Williams from Mohave County, I really look up to as a role model. And it's kind of odd because he's younger than me. I've been a lawyer a lot longer than him. But when he took the bench, I just admired him so much for his judicial temperament. He is very respectful to all parties on the bench on both sides. He never loses his temper. He's very measured in his decision-making. He's a hard worker. He's very prepared. And when I interviewed for the position I have right now, that was one of the questions, and I made a comment that I'll make here today that I really wanted to emulate Judge Williams' temperament on the bench, although I knew I had to work within the confines of my personality. But Judge Williams is just a tremendous role model for his dedication to the bench and his temperament, just a great judicial temperament. There's nobody better than his temperament on the bench. Judge Stephen F. Kahn, who I think is in this building someplace or behind me, great role model for everybody. He is a tremendous worker. I like to think to myself as a workhorse, but I don't know there's anybody on the planet that ever has the work ethic, the drive than Judge Kahn has. He comes in Saturdays early in the mornings. Sometimes during the weekdays he comes in real early in the morning. He is extremely dedicated. I don't know of any person ever that is more dedicated in their profession than Judge Kahn. And he just had the greatest respect of everybody in the criminal justice system. You knew that any decision he made that was well-reasoned, well-researched, well-thought-out, and well-prepared for. And I just love his unrelenting work ethic. And I'll just say one other judge. This is a Maricopa County judge, Joseph Welty. Some of you may know Joseph Welty. I met him at one of my first judicial trainings. And what I like about Judge Welty is his willingness to just mentor and help everybody else without question. And what I mean by that is I'm in Mohave County, I'm a commissioner. I could send him an email question thinking, well, he probably won't ever respond to me. Why would he? I get a response back in about 10 minutes with basically legal authority to answer my question. And I just really just absolutely love how he is so devoted in mentoring and helping other people without question. Early on in my career, I talked to him a lot about just different issues, and maybe these are things I didn't want to talk about with any judges locally or didn't feel comfortable with it, so I talked with him, and he would always lend me his ear, and I really looked at him as a role model. And I always try to emulate or work into my role as a judge all these qualities that I like. The attorneys that practice in front of me know that there's an open door. They can come in anytime they want and ask me questions about cases that are not pending, of course, but if a defendant has already been convicted and sentenced, they can ask me about how they did at the trial, how they did at the evidentiary hearing. They can talk to me about procedural matters, and they know there's an open door. They can come and talk to me at any time. And there's another judge in Maricopa County. He's retired. He's been retired for about 10 years. I don't know if you ever know him or knew him, John Foreman. And I like John Foreman, and I'm sure the attorneys, if there's any in the court and here, will probably laugh about this. What I like about John Foreman is just his strict command of his courtroom, that when you're in his courtroom, you better know the rules that he wants you to follow as an attorney. You better be on time. You better be prepared. I would never go this far, but he actually had 10 rules on each of the counsel's table that you had to follow. If you didn't follow it, he let you know that. He let you know that. And I really appreciate that because that's kind of the structure that I like as well. So I've always tried to create a super judge from all these qualities that I've liked and admired over the years.
Thank you.
How do you view the role of a judge within the framework of our Constitution?
Well, in the Constitution, of course, there's the separation of powers. There's the executive branch that makes the law. There's the legislative branch that makes the law. There's the executive branch that enforces the law. And then there's the judicial branch that applies the law. So there's a distinct separation of powers. And again, the judicial role is not to make law. It is to apply the law that is applicable in a particular situation, and to do so in a very fair and impartial manner.
Thank you.
How would you describe your judicial philosophy?
Did you say philosophy is plural?
I did say judicial philosophy, but you may answer it as you please.
Thank you. I do not have a singular judicial philosophy that governs or dictates every decision I make. I cannot be that confined. And I say that because as a defense attorney, I always get really frustrated when I'm advocating for a client, perhaps not to go to jail, and the judge will say, well, last week I gave a similar defendant 30 days in jail, so I have to give your guy 30 days in jail. Well, no, you don't. You could look at this individually. So I want to make sure that I never had a singular philosophy that governed everything. As far as some of the philosophies I have, certainly conservative. I believe in judicial restraint, not judicial activism. We don't really do a lot of statutory interpretation so much as trial court judges, but I would certainly put myself in the category of a textualist when it comes to reading statutes and applying the statutes. As I indicated in my application packet, there are certain cases that historically I can be fairly harsh on. And a lot of these are simply sentencing schemes that are set by the legislature. I strictly follow the sentencing scheme set forth by the legislature. Before I came here, I was doing a settlement conference on a defendant charged with multiple counts of manslaughter, and I was explaining to him the sentencing range, which sounded fairly horrific, and I explained to him, this is the sentencing range set forth by the legislature that I'm required to follow. It doesn't matter if I agree with this or disagree with this. This is the sentence you're going to receive if you're convicted in this case, because that's set forth by the legislature. So I strictly follow the law. I don't try to make new law. I don't try to stretch the law. I simply follow the law as written, and I follow the sentencing code as written.
Thank you.
Commissioner, what role do you believe crime victims should play in criminal cases?
Well, crime victims, of course, have constitutional rights in Arizona. And that's, I think, fairly unique in Arizona. That's not just a statute or rules of procedure. They have absolute constitutional rights. Every single morning when I take the bench, the very first thing I do is I read into the record all the constitutional rights that the victims do have. And I always kind of feel odd doing this because most times than not, there's no victims in the courtroom, but I still read the victims' rights every single day. And the settlement conference I just came from, all the victims were there in the courtroom participating. And the victim, as set forth by the Arizona Constitution, has the absolute right to be notified at every single stage of the proceedings. They have the right to be consulted on release conditions, a plea agreement. They have a right to come to every single court date and to be heard. And victims, again, yesterday a defense attorney was upset with me because I denied her motion to continue the trial, and one of the reasons was the victim had expressed her desire for a speedy trial. He was charged with sexual assault, and from day one she was asking for a speedy trial, and I denied the defense motion to continue and was kind of criticized by her for putting the victim's rights above the defendant's rights. But again, I have to be very cognizant of the victim's desires and the victim's rights. For me, really the most important role a victim can have is at sentencing to express to me the impact the crime has had on his or her. I will never, quite frankly, put any weight into a specific sentence a victim requests. That just has no relevance to me whatsoever. It's my determination on the appropriate sentence, but what I need to know from the victim and what I want to know is what impact the crime has had on his or her life. So I think that is really the most important role for the victim, is again to express to the court how this has affected their life.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you touched a little bit on this earlier, but can you describe what characteristics you believe constitute good judicial temperament, and how you would apply those traits as a superior court judge?
There are really a lot of things that make good judicial temperament. The number one thing is respect for both sides. And it's so important for a judge to show respect to both sides. The other thing is that clearly shows that the judge is neutral. It is so important that a judge doesn't show bias one way or another, and if you respect both sides, then you're showing that you're neutral. The other thing that, quite frankly, I struggle with is having as good as eye contact as I can. And I say that because whenever a person is addressing me in court, I want to look at them and give them my due attention. And sometimes it's hard when you have the file in front of you, you have notes you're trying to refer to, you have the clerk passing you notes, you have your judicial assistant sending you messages on your computer. So there's a lot of things on the bench that can be distracting that I kind of struggle with. But I think one of the things is, again, showing the litigants that you are in fact paying attention and giving them due respect. And I always think about the defendant who's been in custody for, let's say, 9 months, and this is his or her day in court to be sentenced. I think to myself, this person has been sitting in jail for 8 or 9 months. This person is coming to court for their day in court. They're being sentenced. And when they stand up and address me, you know, it is my obligation to make sure I'm listening to them intently. I'm not looking down. Even if I'm looking down, I'm paying attention to them still. If I go on my computer because I need to respond to my judicial assistant real quick, even though I may be listening to the person, that makes a very bad impression. And I've seen judicial complaints where some of the complaints are, well, the judge was always on his computer the whole time, not paying attention, and they probably didn't understand they may be dealing with an emergency situation. So I think my judicial assistant is in the building as well. So Kara, if there's times you are wondering why I don't respond quickly enough on the computer, it's because I'm engaged with whoever's in court addressing me, and I want to stay engaged with that person. So staying engaged with everybody that is in your courtroom, being respectful for everybody. I think starting court on time. I think it makes a bad impression if you have a reputation that, well, you know this particular judge, he's never ready, he's never on time. You have to be prepared. You have to start on time, you have to give everybody due respect, and you have to really be engaged with everybody who's addressing you in court.
Thank you.
Commissioner, what rule of procedure would you change, if any, and how would you change it?
I would change Rule 15.2. No, that's not the right rule, 14.2. Whatever the rule that allows you a change of judge for no reason. I would change that rule, and I'm not saying that because I get noticed a lot. I've been noticed a few times. I could probably count on maybe one hand the times I've been noticed. But in a small community like Mohave County, it just kind of bothers me that you can actually lawyer shop. There was a time period where the judges split the criminal caseload 50-50. So you could simply pick your judge. If you got assigned a judge you didn't like, just notice him, you get your other judge. I certainly strongly believe in the rule that allows you to change a judge for cause. So if you think there's a judge who has some bias or prejudice, a business interest in the case, where they should be challenged for cause, I believe in that strongly, but I'm just not a real big fan, especially again in a small community where lawyers, quite frankly, have the ability to lawyer shop. When you file a notice of change of judge, you have to avow all the reasons that you are not using that notice for. there is no other reason you could be noticing a judge other than the reasons listed you're avowing that you're not noticing a judge for. There's just no other reason. And I know there's attorneys that notice me because they may think I'm too harsh on aggravated assault cases and things like that, or crimes against children. And, that just kind of bothers me because I just don't think you should really lawyer shop. So that's a rule that could probably use some modification.
If appointed, are you prepared to run in the next general election?
Yes.
Do you want to explain what prepares you for that?
Well, I've never ran election before, so I don't know. I've been told by Judge Kahn. Judge Kahn warned me, whoever is appointed will be replacing Judge Kahn. He warned me that if you get appointed, you have to immediately start beginning your election and your campaign. And there's something about that really bothers me, because I just don't think that we should be elected, quite frankly, but I understand the Constitution, and I live with it. There's just something that, to me, that is just degrading. Every time Judge Kahn, every 4 years, would come by and ask for a signature on his petition, there's just something about that was degrading to me. But I understand that is the process. That's what you have to do. In Mohave County, historically, an incumbent is not ran against. The incumbents that have been ran against typically win fairly largely. There's only one incumbent I could ever think of that did not win an election. When she was appointed, I think she had to run for election like just 6 months later. She came in towards the end of a term and had to run for election fairly quickly, and didn't prevail. But what I would prepare for is, again, I've never ran a campaign. It would be something fun and challenging for me to do. Being my hometown here, I know I have a tremendous amount of support in Kingman. I have a tremendous amount of support in the law enforcement community across the entire county. So what I'd start doing from day one is network. And there's certain segments of the population, especially in Lake Havasu City, that probably doesn't know me very well. So it'll be a matter of networking and getting people to meet me. I think that's kind of the main thing, is getting out there and talking to people and letting people know who I am, so they can decide in election whether or not they're the candidate that they want to vote for or not. But yes, election will be next year, and I'll be strongly prepared for it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 hypothetical questions for you. And I'm going to ask one, and Kate will ask the other. So here's the first. Imagine you're presiding over a criminal trial, and in the middle of the trial, you discover that the prosecutor has failed to disclose potentially exculpatory evidence to the defense counsel. What, if anything, would you do about it?
And we're assuming, obviously, the defense counsel doesn't know about this, only I know about this.
Your time to answer, your question to answer.
Okay. Well, obviously, I would absolutely make sure the defense counsel knew about this. Under Brady, the prosecutor has a constitutional obligation to disclose anything to the defense that may assist them in the case, especially something that may show that they're innocent. So if the prosecutor had not done so, number one, they'd be ordered to do so. And thereafter, I would have to, I would probably, quite frankly, I'd probably declare a mistrial at that point. I'd probably declare a mistrial. I would order the prosecutor to disclose the information to defense counsel, and then I would invite, which certainly they would do, defense counsel to file a motion to dismiss with prejudice, and then we'd have to have a hearing, perhaps an evidentiary hearing, on whether or not the case should be dismissed with prejudice. I would, quite frankly, find that as a fairly significant violation that I would take swift action on. Again, mistrial, and I'd be deciding at some point whether or not the case should be dismissed with prejudice. Under the facts presented to me, there's probably a good chance it would be.
Thank you.
The next hypothetical question and our final question of the day is, in this hypothetical, you're presiding over a civil case. And on the eve of trial, you suddenly recollect that you had a previous business relationship with one of the parties to the litigation, what, if anything, would you do?
Disclose it, absolutely. And just today, I had an arraignment where a defendant's name was very familiar, and so I had to inquire whether or not he was a previous client or not, so that could be disclosed to the attorney. So, yeah, absolutely, I would not only disclose that to the attorneys, but then I would invite the attorneys to perhaps file any pleadings or make any requests based on that disclosure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sipe. This is now your time to provide us with any additional information.
Okay,
So-
now, what's my time limit on this again?
Well, use your time judiciously, let's just say that. But go ahead, and you could provide us with any additional information that you see fit.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate this opportunity. I mean, this is just a great forum that you are doing interviews in public. We've never done this before. As you can tell, we have a pretty nice turnout because people are interested in this, so I definitely thank you for being here and appreciate this opportunity. Also, I just have to commend the governor's office for the level of vetting that they're doing in this case. In the application, of course, we had to disclose quite a few references, and people are getting back to me that not only are they contacting us, they're actually asking questions. They're not just saying, what do you think about him? Thank you. So I think this is just tremendous, the level of vetting, investigation that the governor's office is doing, and I just want to thank you and commend you for all of that. Whoever you choose is going to be a very good choice for the governor. I can tell you that, whether it's me or somebody else, it's going to be a good choice because you guys are going way and beyond doing your homework, so I thank you for that. Now, that, of course, was just to stall to ask this question. I just don't know what else I can tell you. I mean, I was born and raised here in Kingman. It is such a joy to be in my hometown practicing law, now being a judge and providing those services to the community. It's just so fun sometimes when I'm doing jury selection. I'm like, hey, there's my old high school biology teacher, or he taught me earth science in junior high. So it's kind of neat to have those interactions with people I knew from a previous life. So I really enjoy that. This has probably been covered. Really, my strength is just my work ethic. Again, I don't think I can compete with Judge Kahn, but I have just an unrelenting work ethic. I just love the work. One of the reasons, the other reasons I didn't get to, because of course it was a very short answer as to why I want to become a judge, is even though I had a pretty nice, cushy life, I missed working. I just love the work, and I knew what I was getting myself into when I took this position. So I just love the grind. I love the work. It is so much more satisfying to prepare an issue and a case where you're making the decision as opposed to being the litigant or the advocate. So I really enjoy that. As I've indicated, I have a lot of support in the community, my hometown, and it would just be a thrill to have Division III after my name and to follow Judge Kahn. Judge Kahn is just an icon in Mohave County. We miss him. We're hoping there's an error in his birth certificate and he's really not 70. We can bring him back. But I just really, it would be pretty humbling, quite frankly, to follow in Judge Kahn's footsteps as a judicial officer. So again, it's hard to answer this question because when I was in private practice, anytime a client was kind of lawyer shopping and said, well, why should I hire you over somebody else? I just wouldn't answer that question. I mean, I'm not the type that beats on my chest or says, here's how great I am. I'd invite him to go talk to court staff. I'd say the people that are probably in the best position to tell you who the best lawyers are is court staff. Go talk to them. So I just am not the one that says, oh yeah, choose me, I'm the best. I put together an application. I don't know how many letters that the governor's office received. If everybody wrote a letter who said they would, he received 15, even though he only asked for 10 or 12. You've talked to all the, probably by now, all of the references. So I'm just really just very proud to be a judge. And every day I take the bench, I I always do so in a very humble manner. I always think to myself, I am very privileged to be in a position where I was able to go to school, go to law school, become a lawyer, become a judge, and now I'm serving my community in a judicial capacity. And I'm a commissioner, so I'm somewhat limited in what I can do. If I'm appointed as Superior Court judge, that opens up a lot more services that I can provide for my community, and that's what I'm really striving for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'd like to move into public comment, and Commissioner Sipe, you're of course welcome to stay if you'd like. Before we do that, though, I do want to make a few quick remarks. The first thing that I wanted to cover was timing of this vacancy, because I know many of you have asked questions of us, or maybe wondering how long it will take for us to fill the vacancy. So what I do want to say is we are going to move as expeditiously as we can. We will meet after these interviews and determine who we would recommend to the governor to call back to Phoenix. And I believe that that will be done as quickly as possible. And if the governor is available, he will, of course, meet with the person or persons who are called back. And if not, he may make the appointment based on staff recommendation. So this is all done in order to fill the vacancy as quickly as we can to meet the needs of the Superior Court and the citizens of the county. So I hope that provides as much information as we can about the timing. The second thing that I want to say is about the process, and it is true that Governor Ducey's staff, us, Kate and me primarily as the governor's legal counsel, put a lot of work and effort into all of these vacancies. And it's because judges are such an important part of our constitutional system of government. Judges touch every one of us in many different ways, whether we have a civil dispute with a neighbor or a business, or whether we are at our most vulnerable when we are in a domestic dispute, or children are involved, or if we are, if we run afoul of the law and we're in a criminal situation. So we view this as one of the most important functions of the governor's office, authority vested to him under the state constitution. And that's why we put this much effort into it. I think you only have to look towards the judges in your county here. I think that, working with Judge Gertler over the past 2 years as the county's presiding judge has been a pleasure for our office, and we thank him for all the work that he's done. It sounds to us like Judge Kahn has been a tremendously valuable part of this community, as well as other judges, including Rick Williams, who we've met many times, and others. And, I wasn't born here, but I've lived here for most of my life. Kate was born here. And we remember back in the 1980s when Governor Mckee was being impeached. That impeachment trial in the Senate was presided over by then Chief Justice Frank Gordon, who came from the Mohave County Superior Court and was one of the most recognized people, I think, in Arizona judicial history. So you have a lot to be proud of here, and we feel honored to be part of your community and having this a community process in deciding who's going to be the next judge. So with that, let's begin our public comment period. I think I might see Representative Cobb here. So if everybody's okay with that, since we have an elected representative, what I'd like to do is invite Representative Cobb to make the first public comment. If I'm missing any elected officials, forgive me. I'll be sure to recognize you. But after Representative Cobb's remarks, here's how we'd like to do it. Anyone is free to come up to the podium at any time. Just be respectful of other members of the audience. If you'd like to come up and nobody else is coming up, why don't you just stand up, make your way to the podium, and then anyone else who'd like to speak, just wait your turn. I feel like we've been, as we've been doing this, that's pretty much an orderly process. If we have to change it midstream, we will. But that's enough of me talking. Representative Cobb, why don't you take it away?
Well, thank you so much for coming to Mohave County, the interview committee. I know most of you, so thank you for coming, and I appreciate that. I actually felt it was pretty important to sit through this and to give a recommendation. I have a patient sitting in my chair right now, so I'm heading back there, so excuse my dress. So, Judge Kahn has done such a tremendous job for our county. And I'm really sad to see him go. And he's going to have some very large shoes to fill. And if you can ever say that someone is a very young 70-year-old, he is a young 70-year-old. And I feel like he had a lot of years left in him that we didn't get to utilize. So I'm going to be sad to see him go. Of course, I work very closely with Judge Gertler, too, so I'm glad to see that he's still here. And all the judges, Williams also, and some of the other judges. But you have 3 good candidates here, and they're all from different communities, so it brings the diversity to us also. And I can't even imagine doing an interview in public. It's difficult to do an interview in private, but to sit up there and do an interview in public has got to be a little bit nerve-shaking. So I'm proud of all 3 of them. But I'm here to recommend Supervisor Steve Moss today. I have worked with Steve professionally and in the private life and as our county supervisor. And what I've really seen with Steve is that he is very level-headed, very unjudgmental, and he is very open to comments. There's often times that we have had disagreements, and we still do. We had one the other day. So, and we will always disagree and agree at times. But he is very open to listen to me and to actually be open to changing his mind if he feels like my arguments are worthwhile. And Steve and I have had a good relationship through his whole time that he's been a supervisor. And like I said, one of the things that I really enjoy about him is that he has been really open to other points of view and bringing in all the thoughts and processes into what he has made his decision on. And so I hope you give good thought to who comes into our county. I am so proud, as you say, of all of them. I think they all do a great job here, and I'm proud of the judges that represent us at the moment, and I hope can continue to do that. So, and thank you for allowing me to go first so that I could get back to my patient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Esteemed panel, thank you for your indulgence today. My name is Gary Watson, Supervisor of Mohave County District 1, and I'll make my comments brief today, but I'm here to tell you that after working for 5 years with Supervisor Moss, he's an outstanding candidate, and I think he would be an outstanding judge. The time it takes to become aware of all the responsibilities of being a supervisor really are pretty daunting. And I was really impressed with Supervisor Moss' ability to grasp the entirety of the situation. His situational awareness, as we call in the field, is outstanding. And I think we would be making a real good choice in Supervisor Moss, although we have 3 great candidates, and I'm very proud of each and every one of them. But I'll be making my comment short. Steve's an outstanding young gentleman, a fine family, dedicated to his community. And I know he'll do a fine job on the bench. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I certainly want to thank you also for coming to Mohave County, but I especially want to thank you for mentioning Frank X. Gordon Jr., who just happens to be one of my heroes. I am currently a setting board of supervisors, and I do work with Supervisor Moss and Supervisor Watson that you just heard from. But before becoming a supervisor, I had a career in law enforcement, so I do know the judges of Mohave County, some better than others, but Frank X. Gordon was by all means my favorite, and then Judge Kahn probably comes close to that mark. Was always a joy to listen to and quite entertaining, and his sense of humor is second to none. But I think my fellow supervisor, Stephen Moss, comes close to that. He does have a very healthy, dry sense of humor and uses it appropriately. But what I can tell you, working with Supervisor Moss for the past 3 years, I'm proud to recommend him for this position because he shows up. You know, you can't do anything unless you show up, and he does. He's prepared, he is articulate, and one of the things I really admire about Supervisor Moss is that he is able to take a complex issue that all 5 of us discuss up there in our seats as supervisors, and he's able to take our comments and summarize them in an articulate, short, brief manner, and we all understand what it was that we all said that was so complex. He can make it simple. So I think that's one of the qualities that would make him an excellent Superior Court judge. But I have to tell you that Billy Sipe, he's lived in Mohave County all of his life in Kingman, and so have I, and I think he also would make an excellent judge. But I don't know him professionally as well as I do Stephen Moss, so that'd be my recommendation to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll complete the march of the supervisors. I'm Hildy Angus, and I'm the supervisor from District 2, that's Bullhead City. And this has been really interesting this afternoon, coming here in an open forum. Thank you for coming. You have some excellent candidates. It was really interesting. I don't envy you, but today I'm here to recommend my friend and colleague, Stephen Moss. You know, I wrote down some things because I knew it was going to be, I'm going to have a short period of time, and there's a lot of people who want to talk, but there are 4 words that characterize Steve, and that's smart, loyal, decent, and fair. And I was going to say that I think that Steve is probably the smartest supervisor on the board, but I won't say that now. But he is, and for what Supervisor Bishop said, he can take these complex problems and sort of, and not just for the board, but for the people viewing, you know, he has this ability to just take it down to, you know, the level that we can all understand everybody, and we always appreciate that. And when they say he's decent, you know, he's a family man, he's a Rotarian, he's always doing things in the community. And I think that that's something that's lacking in public today, is that just sort of decency. And that's what I would like people to say about me, and I'm honored to be able to say that about Steve. And then why we're all here, and what's the most germane, I think, to this discussion is fairness. He is incredibly fair. We don't always agree. We are very civil about it. But again, I have seen times where Steve was leaning one way and said he was going to vote one way, and then new information came from the administration or from the public, and he changed his vote. Because he wants to do what's right. And I think for this position, that and all those other characteristics is what you want. So I recommend Stephen Moss. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And supervisors, thank you for allowing us to use your auditorium. That's very gracious.
Hello, my name is Lois Wakimoto, and I'm just a citizen. But I've lived in Mohave County for 30 years, and I've known Steve for probably 20 of those years. I've known him on a personal, professional, and as a community person. The thing about Steve is, let's get this straight, is he's a good guy and he's qualified. But more important than that, Steve is somebody that listens, and he makes you feel like you're heard. He also has a positive attitude all the time, and he's able to defuse difficult situations. I've been with him and watched him work in the community, and he's been able to have a calm demeanor in areas, and he's able to make his point. He's able to make those tough decisions, even though they don't go the way you want them to go. He explains it, and it kind of makes it a little bit more palatable. Steve believes that children are our future, and that means he's invested a lot in Mohave County's future. He's been the regional director for soccer, brought lots of soccer tournaments to Mohave County. He's worked on the Rotary Park tirelessly so that children would have more area to play. And I've been privileged to work with him in the Mohave Valley Park that he's worked diligently with. But what's good about Steve is he pays attention to detail. And I've watched him do this in all these things. Not only does he believe in the community of children, he's done pro bono work for the community. He volunteers wills for veterans as well as elderly. And so, being an elected official, it's hard to be well-liked in Bullhead City, Havasu, Mohave Valley, and Fort Mohave, but Steve is. So for these reasons, I think he should be our next Superior Court judge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Mckee. I'm a general contractor, the owner of Grand Canyon Development, and from Bullhead City. I really appreciate this forum that you've offered for us, and you're traveling down here to hear our perspectives on the people that we're supporting for this judgeship. And in light of what I consider a wave of judicial activism across America, where certain judges and litigators are pushing an agenda which I believe is undermining the Constitution, the ideals that our founding fathers put forth. We read about the headlines every day, the deplorable decisions that they're making. And I can think of no better time in our history to be really conscious of the people that we support and appoint to these positions. And it's an opportunity for us to come together as a county and as a community and really rally around those that we believe that not only espouse the constitutional principles, but also abide by them, apply for them. So I'm here to talk on behalf of Steve Moss. And we have an opportunity to let him shine as a light as a constitutionalist in town. He has proven himself over and over again as an unbelievably open, transparent, compassionate, and effective litigator. As a member of the Mohave County Board of Supervisors, it's been a pleasure to watch him work and see how he works with the other members. He's gone out of his way to execute the will of the people. He has always made himself available. He has an open door policy. It's a very rare occasion if you can see Mr. Moss walking across any sports field or any crowded room where somebody hasn't extended the arm out to him to shake his hand, ask him a question, and he takes the time to sit and listen. And that's the reason he does that, is because he's a very community-oriented individual. He has literally spent thousands upon thousands of hours himself building up a wonderful AYSO soccer program for our community, which is much needed. It's a great, wholesome activity. It has not only brought families together, but has given us a sense of community, which we were lacking at the time. And also, very importantly, has been a valuable source. It has been a valuable source of revenue for us. And the more successful that program has become, the larger the program has come, it has given us even a better sense of community. And we are very appreciative for him for that. Steve is the very embodiment of what I consider the understanding the concept of selfless public service. I have been the pleasure of knowing many legislators and litigators throughout the country who profess to be so, and none of them even come close to the sense of community that Mr. Moss has shown me. In addition to that, another quality he has, he's an exceptional mediator. As a volunteer for AYSO myself, I've seen him mediate many opportunities, and he's got a really unique talent for being able to look at things heuristically and separate himself and come up with unique solutions that other people don't see, that are always fair and equitable, and makes these decisions and problem solves in a very honorable and dignified manner. I'm going to, my final note and characteristic I'd like to pass on Steve is Steve's integrity. It seems that his mission in life has always been to maintain the integrity and the honor of the people that he surrounds himself with and surrounded by. It's very important to him. He speaks the truth all the time without being rude or brash. He offers valuable and honest insight when asked, and then more importantly, he takes the time to listen to your insight. You always know where you stand with him because he's a man of truth and honor, and I don't think that I have met anybody who doesn't like or at least respect Mr. Moss. Steve is one of the most honorable people that I know. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to stand here on his behalf and his support. I do ask that you would consider him and appoint him to this position. We need people like him for our community. I know that his skill in the law and his love for the law and the Constitution will make him an exemplary judge, and we need people like him. So I ask if you would consider him and appoint him for that position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Kara Letcher, and I am, excuse me, Judge Sipes, J.A. Before that, I was Judge Julie Ross, J.A., and prior to that, I was the floating J.A. Sorry, I kind of have a cold, too. I had an opportunity to work with most of the judicial officers when I was the floating J.A., and I've had the opportunity to work with all of the candidates. When I worked in Havasu, I helped cover Judge Davis, so I've had an opportunity to work with her. So I'm not here to endorse anybody. I think it would be nice if Judge Sipe got the position, but I also think it would be nice if we had another woman. So I think it would be great if Judge Davis got the position. She's handled the overflow for some of the Superior Court cases for quite a while. I don't know if that's happened for a while because I haven't been the floating JA for quite some time. But I also worked with Mr. Moss when I was Judge Ross JA and as a floating JA. So I know all the candidates, and any one of them would be really good for this position. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sue Donahue, and I have a very new respect for the law because I served a year in the state Senate, and I realize how hard it is to know all the laws and to be a judge and enforce those laws without putting your opinion on it. I have been in Judge Jill Davis's courtroom several times, and I have seen her be fair to both parties. I have known her for 15 years. She has been an active member of Lake Havasu Republican Women's Club since 2002. I'm actually the president of that club. And as a club, we do support Jill Davis for this position. Also, I'd like to say that as the sitting Justice of the Peace and Superior Court pro tem, she is the most qualified person for this job. And it's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Hello, my name is Gaynell Cruz, and I know Judge Jill Davis both professionally and personally, socially. I'm now retired, but I was a process server and officer of the court. I never appeared in her courtroom, but I had a lot of paperwork cross her desk, and I knew most all of the clerks and the court employees that have worked with Jill. And the one compliment that is always given to her is how respectful she is of their position, and that she understands the caseloads and tries to allow them to express that to her so they get that steam off also. But in her courtroom, I just observed several times. What I noticed most about Jill was she ruled strictly by the law. And being in a small community, you might know many of the people that are appearing before you, but she was totally strict about the way that she ruled and by the book. And even if she knew someone, that doesn't mean she's going to rule for you. Her ethics are impeccable. Her family is very well respected, and she's very well respected. The one thing that she can bring to this bench that the others cannot is diversity. And we need some diversity on the bench for Mohave County. With that, I would like to recommend Judge Jill Davis for that position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barb Cole, And I don't have a speech or anything like that. I just want to give you my opinion of what I think of Judge Davis. I've been in her courtroom. I've seen her in action. I would describe her, the words I would use to describe her is integrity and fairness. And I think she has all the qualifications and the experience to be the next judge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming up here. My name's Kenneth Barth. I'm a resident of Mohave County, taxpayer and registered voter. I do not know any of the lawyers or judges of the county, so I guess perhaps I'm the most objective from that standpoint. I was encouraged to hear today from all three of the applicants the importance of an independent judiciary, and I would ask them perhaps if they would supplement their answers with regards to the paramount importance of that independent judiciary of being neutral and detached from law enforcement, and to never, ever become a rubber stamp for law enforcement as a judge. And you had asked the three applicants if there was a rule or procedure that they might be interested in changing, and perhaps they could supplement their answers to what they previously submitted, because I have two suggestions. One would be to forthwith end the practice of non-lawyers presiding over any trial in which a defendant's liberty or property could be taken from them. I believe that that should end forthwith, and I would ask the three applicants to see if they would support such a measure to end non-lawyers in the municipal courts and in the justice court from presiding over trials in which a defendant's liberty can be taken away. I could elaborate on that, but I won't in the remaining time. The other thing was, the other procedure that needs to change, and I would ask them to supplement their answers, is that unlike the federal court system in Arizona, in the state court system, if you want to avoid a default judgment and subject your property to being seized to satisfy the judgment, you are required to pay a fee of $222 to merely file an answer to a civil case as a defendant, not as a third-party complaint, counterclaim, or cross-claim, but to merely file an answer to avoid a default judgment. You are required to pay a fee. In my view, that is a taking of property without due process prior to a judgment and needs to end. And I would ask the three applicants if they would supplement their answers with regards to requiring a defendant in a civil case to avoid default by having to pay a fee prior to a judgment being issued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Hammond, resident of Golden Valley, Arizona in Mohave County. Would like to also commend Governor Ducey for holding the interviews and hearings this way in the public, and for allowing you guys to travel here to Mohave County. I think it's a great testament to your dedication to not only the state, but Mohave County, and also to this process. So thank you very much. If you'd like to stay over for a few days, I know a great resort in Laughlin, Nevada that'll put you up.
We might take you up on that.
We got a great new pool. You know, your job is very difficult on many levels, and after hearing from all candidates today, I think it just got more difficult. And I was thinking to myself that it is rough to make a decision of one, but then I was also thankful that we have such strong candidates in Mohave County. I think it speaks well to the people that reside and work in Kingman, Lake Havasu, Bullhead City, Golden Valley, and all over Mohave County. I am here to toss my recommendation for what it's worth to Steve Moss. I have been a resident from Mohave County for over 35 years. Although not born here, I did graduate from Mohave High School in Bullhead City in 1985. And I can tell you I've worked with Steve on several charitable boards, a little over 15 years, Boys and Girls Club, Los Matadors, and worked with him on his efforts at ASO. And I can tell you he is a very stand-up, great guy. He's the type of person that you want as your neighbor and your friend. Lawyers are very intelligent, most are, and above normal education grade. However, I have never seen him talk down to anyone. And I think one of the supervisors mentioned is that he can simplify things very easily for who he talks to. And he does that in a great sense of not putting the person down, but just simplifying it and making everybody part of the process. There have been times as his stint as Board of Supervisor that people have dressed him down, not politely, not professionally, and at times horribly. And I would not have restrained myself as well as he did, and I give him credit for being able to step up and deliver his position and his belief on his seat on the board of Mohave County Board of Supervisors, and being a great person. I think you will do great if you choose Steve Moss. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Mohave County. I am Mark Clark. I am the Vice Mayor of Bullhead City, and I am here to speak in favor of Supervisor Moss to fill the seat of Judge Kahn moving forward. I've known Steve for about 15 years now. Originally, we met in Rotary, and Steve exemplifies the key cornerstone of Rotary, which is service above self. I've personally experienced with him working on Rotary events, pulling meat apart at the Borough Barbecue and serving our constituents as they come down the line. I also know Steve as a professional, on a professional basis. I'm a water consultant, and his law firm has worked on contracts for my corporation. I also know Steve on a political basis firsthand, working as a councilman in Bullhead City. I'm a 3-term councilman, and Steve worked great with the city on several projects, including the AYSO tournaments that have brought in a lot of revenue to the city and to the surrounding communities. I think Steve would be an excellent candidate for the bench. He's very forthright, very intelligent. He's just a top-notch individual, and I would strongly suggest that you strongly consider him for the vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Robinson. I'm also from Golden Valley. It's well represented today. Thank you very much for being here. It speaks very well of our governor to put together such a great group of people to come here and make this a public process. I thank him for doing that. I thank you all for being here. I'm going to quote our former Vice President and U.S. Senator Uncle Joe Biden when he said, "It's a matter of judgment." And Steve Moss has expressed great wisdom, discernment, and judgment in all of his dealings with me in all the years I've known him. He also, when he looks at the law, he looks at the law and the facts before making a decision. You've heard enough about him. I can't say any more about his integrity, his credibility, his working with the board. And in fact, that brings me to my one point why I don't want you to choose him. He's a great supervisor, and I don't want to lose him for Mohave County. But what we lose in District 5, we gain in Mohave County in the state of Arizona. And the last reason that I believe you should choose Steve Moss, and I think Judge Kahn would agree with me, is he has a great first name.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Eric Engel. I'm a practicing attorney. I've been here in Kingman, practicing in Mohave County Superior Court and the local justice court since 1994. I've known Steve for probably a little over a decade, first professionally, because I've had a handful of cases with him where he represents the opposite side. And a lot of times in representing a client against another attorney, they have forceful personalities, as attorneys often do, and you run into some attorneys with a kind of monolithic approach. They have their position, they have their client, they're right, you're wrong, and to hell with everybody except their client. And those people are difficult to do business with, and I don't think they best serve the interests of their client when they take positions like that and have a demeanor like that in dealing with the opposition, who may be represented by myself. In dealing with Steve, Steve has always been a down-to-earth sort of representative for his clients, where he's very diligent in representing them and does a very effective job. But at the same time, he comes armed with the law and with the facts and with an understanding of his position and an ability to juxtapose or compare his position with your position, and sometimes, short of litigation, work out a successful deal that makes both sides at least somewhat satisfied with the positions that each party has. And Steve's been instrumental in that sort of thing, and he's very good at it. And I think that's the type of temperament he would bring to the bench if you were to choose him to replace Judge Kahn. Big shoes to fill. You have three, I think, very qualified candidates, but I'm here to speak on behalf of Steve because I know him and have dealt with him in a way where I've seen his demeanor and I've seen his ethical, the way he displaces himself ethically in the way he represents his clients. The second way I've also known him is in his role as a supervisor. And as a supervisor, he's the type of person where he'll listen to facts and information, process them, take his position, and it's never a mystery where his position is or how he arrived at it. He's very articulate, and I see him on Facebook with some frequency. People have asked me about issue X. Here's my position on issue X. Here's what I think is important about issue X. Here's the facts we have. Here's the position I think we should take. So even if you don't agree with Steve, you know where he came from, and you walk away at least with a perspective. Maybe I still don't agree with him, but I see where he's coming from, and I certainly respect his position. So I think he'd be a very qualified candidate, and I'd encourage you to choose him. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Tashuri Elias. I am an attorney in Bullhead City. I've been in Bullhead City for about 10 years. I've had the pleasure of appearing in front of Judge Davis. I've also had a working relationship with Judge Sipe. I am here to endorse Steve Moss. I've had the longest working relationship with Mr. Moss. As an attorney in Bullhead City, in a small community like this, you get to know everybody, basically, and you have a good working relationship, and hopefully a good working relationship with everyone. Being on the opposing side of a case with Steve Moss, I have to say, is probably the most pleasurable experience I've had as a litigator. He says what he means what he says. He's an all-rounded person. He's a great leader in the community, but most of all, coming to the bench and coming in as a judge, he knows the law. He understands the law. He is fair. I think he would be a perfect candidate for this, and I don't hold it against him that he makes fun of me from being from Canada, and probably is the only thing that he does make fun of me. We also graduated from the same law school, and I've learned a lot from him, and I think he would be an excellent candidate.
Thank you. Thank you.
May it please the panel. My name is Richard Weiss. I'm a judge with the Superior Court right now. I've known all of these candidates for most of their legal career. I came to Mohave County and lived in Bullhead City since 1981. I'm really echoing a lot of the things that you have heard already. We have three very well-qualified candidates. Each one of them can do a fine job. I am going to be endorsing Steve Moss. I have known Steve the most. Back about 10 years ago, you've heard about AYSO, which is the soccer league in Bullhead City. A number of us were recognizing kind of the leaders of the board at that time that we needed to find a new leader to take us to the next level. We were an organization that had about 500 kids, maybe a little bit more than that, playing soccer in Bullhead City. We have a huge Hispanic community, and the three of us, Pawan Agrawal, Kelly Burgess, and I invited Steve to lunch, and little did he know that he got his lunch paid for because he was going to be pushed to become our RC for the soccer league, and he grew the soccer league from that 500 to 600 number to over 1,100. And so he's a leader, and so those are some of the attributes that we find in the judge's realm where it's important to be able to be in the community. Steve can certainly do that. I also have a little statement here about diversity. I think Jill is a fine person. She would make a fine candidate for the bench of Mohave County. The issue of diversity also comes to deal with how we became judges. And if you look at our current bench, we have 4 prosecutors, 3 defense attorneys, 1 civil, and I have a defense and juvenile law background, and we don't have much in domestic relations or civil, and Steve is the one who has that as his background. So to most effectively carry the bench to a level that will process cases as quickly and effectively and efficiently as possible, I think Steve is the best candidate for this job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mehdi Azarmi. I've been in Mohave County for 28 years. I built over 800 homes, 5 subdivisions in the community. And it's interesting, Judge Weiss mentioned about the lunch, because Steve Moss invited me out to lunch to become his treasurer at AYSO. 5-6 years ago, Commissioner Moss invited me to a lunch time and invited me to become his treasurer because of, I guess, the word that was out that I was heavily involved with the community. Under his leadership, AYSO grew from 600 players to 1,200 players. There are some details that Judge Weiss left out. He lowered the fees from $80 per player to $30 per player. We are in a very hard area demographically. Our household incomes, if you look at it, is about $40,000, $42,000 per family, per household. And that means that, a family of 4 have 4 players or 4 kids, it would cost them about $320 to write a check for the registration. And he recognized that immediately, and he got businesses to sponsor AYSO, and he lowered that down to $30. He authorized to me to offer 165 full scholarship for those who couldn't even provide, $30 per player. AYSO upper management insists for the commissioners to attend, so-called training, but it is more vacation, 100% paid by the region. Steve Moss refused to take part in any of those travels or trips that he has. Not only that, he paid for his own gas, car, and hotel when he had the area meetings in Nevada. Instead, he would invite coaches from, for example, United Kingdom, camp to come to our area, which we have a lot of deprived, youth, to be able to enjoy receiving what you normally get in the larger metropolitan area. And that, it was amazing to see how those kids, can enjoy something that they could not afford to be able to pay $900 for 4 days or 5 days in San Diego or Flagstaff. When he became Mohave County supervisor, he noticed that his district is the only district in the Mohave County that does not have a community park. All other districts in the Mohave County, they had parks except for this one. And he teamed a group of business people and other individuals to work on it, and we were able to work with some private sector individuals, contractors, and investors to put together a 39-acre park, which is really being used and enjoyable, and it is appraised by Legacy Foundation to be over $5 million. The cost to the Mohave County was only $250,000. And obviously the other money, $250,000 came from Legacy Foundation and one anonymous donor, $250,000. But the balance of that money came from the, from the private sector and the contractors and all that. But that shows that he's a problem solver. He is able to go out of the box and find opportunities for the youth to be able to strive, to be able to have a place to go, in our community. In Mohave Valley, Fort Mohave, we have two schools that they constantly had flood problem. The flood would come to the schools, and for some reason, the schools were not designed properly. He was able to again team up a private sector and public and solve those problems. Those schools are Camp Mohave Elementary School, which they used to get about 4 or 5 feet of water in their basketball court area. And from that point on, that problem is taken care of, the drainage is done. The other one is Mohave Valley Junior High. And the same thing, they were getting from 11 miles away, the mud and everything would pile up into the parking lot. And I see our superintendent in the audience right now, so he can validate that. And they had to shut down the school. So he was able to, again, team up, private sector and all that, and be able to solve the problem within, the area for the youth, kids, and also for the community. On a personal experience, I had Steve as my attorney in the one and only case against me. And, he, after reviewing the whole thing, he recommended that I advise you to settle because you're going to win the case, but you're going to spend more money for the legal attorneys, for the fees, for the court, and everything else. And that shows, how honest this man is, to be able to say that, okay, I'm not going to run the time on you and take you to the court, but yet this is the best option you have before you. So, with that, if you want to conclude the whole thing, he has the professional ability, he has the work ethic that, I've never seen, integrity, and most definitely the community service that he has provided to the, our community, and I wish him the best because he helped us a lot in the District 5 and in the Mohave County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ken Moyer. I'm an attorney in Mohave County. I have been here since 1994 when I had the pleasure to join up with Judge Gertler and his wife, Jamie Kelly, in Bullhead City. I'm here to support Supervisor Steve Moss for the position of Mohave County Superior Court Judge. I echo the prior comments about the candidates. All three candidates are very, very qualified. I came to know Steve in 1995 when he came to our law firm as an associate. I have known Steve as a colleague, as an adversary, and as a friend. As a colleague, he was always a dedicated and very, very hard worker, very thorough in his work. As an adversary, he fought vigorously but ethically for his client, and as a friend, I could think of no better. What really Steve brings to the table in terms of this position, I think, is his background. He has a very broad background in the civil arena. He has litigated all kinds of different matters throughout the years. Contract issues, domestic relations, real estate, you name it, Steve has handled it and litigated. He's a dedicated family man to his wife and children, and he's very dedicated to making the community that he lives in much better. I echo all of the prior comments that have been made about Steve. I won't stand here and reiterate those today, but I highly recommend Steve for the position.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Riley Fry. I am the superintendent of schools of the Colorado River Schools in Bullhead City and also the high schools in Mohave Valley and Bullhead City as well. I'm honored and grateful to be able to stand before you today and to offer a few comments in a circumstance this grand. I appreciate very much that which has been said, and I wish not to repeat anything and take time, but just a couple of thoughts. I too stand as a friend and a colleague, an associate of Steve Moss, and he has been a tremendous influence in not only my life, but in the lives of thousands of youth in our community. When I was hired as a superintendent, a very profound individual in our education system in Mohave County said, Riley, are you sure you want to go there? They've got a radical board there. Some guy named Moss is just really turning things up over there. I found that to be the case, in fact. He is a person that when he sees changes that need to be made, he stands as an advocate for change and jumps in with both feet. And from that time to this, I've never seen him anything but fully impassioned in that process. I tend to think that each of us, as I watched my own life pass away rather quickly, I tend to think that each of us are destined to make a difference. And I had an old cowboy one time, 25 years ago, tell me that we're meant to rub shoulders with each other. Human beings are meant to do that, and we're meant to make a difference. I challenge anybody in the room to find folks that have had a problem where Steve Moss has been anything but kind in that process. And that's the thing that I think that stands out to me, that when we do rub shoulders with somebody, if we can walk away saying, you know what, that individual was kind and he was empathetic and sympathetic in his remarks, we're all better for that. I wish I could be more like that, in fact, and I very much admire Supervisor Moss in that regard. He is extremely transparent. His integrity is impeccable. But most important, I think, is that he is a genuinely kind and compassionate human being. To me, in my mind, all of the boards that he has served on and the committees that he's been engaged with really complement who he really is. He's here to make a difference. As I look at, from serving on a school board and in Rotary clubs and those types of things, sure, you can impact tens and hundreds and maybe even thousands of people, but what's most important for folks in your business is the one person or the small group that's standing in front of you. And to that end, I think that Steve is destined for this next level and this next chapter. And so I'm honored, again, and grateful for the opportunity to recommend him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Whitney Crow. I'm the superintendent of Mohave Valley Elementary School District that resides in Mr. Moss's superintendent or supervisor zone. First, I want to thank you for coming to Mohave County. I think that shows Governor Ducey's true desire to have a statewide governance and not just in the metropolitan areas. And so thank you for that. We all know it's a drive, and so we thank you for making that drive in reverse for us today. It appears that we have many candidates that are qualified, and so that relieves me to know whoever you may end up taking is going to be a good candidate for that position. I am certainly here to support Supervisor Moss's candidacy or application. As an elementary superintendent, I learned two things. First, go in the dunk tank first because you know the water's going to be clean. And second, go last because you really don't have a lot to say because everyone said it before me. And so I certainly can support Mr. Moss's thorough and detail-oriented work. His service on the school board was when I first realized that, and his county supervisor time is also linked to that. He certainly fully researches the issues and comes up with a decision after looking at every angle, and so I appreciate that. Even when he may not be the angle that I would choose, he does that well. He also is a great communicator. As someone referenced his work on Facebook, there's no doubt of what Mr. Moss's decision is, what his thoughts are, how he came to that, and I think that's an important trait in any kind of public service, but certainly in the courts. And probably most importantly, in my most connection with Mr. Moss is his community connections. He is an advocate for youth, something certainly near and dear to my heart, but I think through his variety of organizations that he works with, it shows he's a contributor to our community, and I think that's important for any official elected or appointed, and so I thank him for that. All those things will make him an excellent candidate, so I'd recommend your support.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Don Martin, and I live in Kingman. I've lived here since 1972, and I'm a retired police officer. The reason I'm so interested in this is because I had the distinct honor and pleasure of working with Judge Kahn when he was a prosecutor. And I can tell you, I've seen a lot of those folks come and go, and he, without a doubt, was the best prosecutor Mohave County ever had, probably ever will have. So then when he was appointed judge, I also had a couple opportunities to see how his court operated, and it was great to see that he made that step up from a prosecutor to a judge, and it just did a fantastic job. And as other people have said, this county has lost a tremendous resource with the mandatory retirement of Judge Kahn, and even though he and I are diametrically opposed politically, he is a fine, fine man. So I was very interested and am interested in who's going to be taking his role on as a Superior Court judge. I don't know Mr. Sipe and the lady very well. I know of them. I've had the pleasure of working or getting before Supervisor Moss due to his work as a supervisor and me offering input on various issues in Mohave County. And like others have said, this guy, he's not one that just comes up and is not prepared and doesn't listen. And as an average citizen in Mohave County, we so appreciate that because we know that where some others may not have a very broad vision, maybe a little narrow, Supervisor Moss has always had an open vision for anything that you have to say to him. So it's a great honor to be able to endorse him in his seeking of this position. And when he's appointed, he will do a fantastic job. And I'm just really glad that you know, to see him apply for this. And like somebody else said, I'm going to be sorry to see him go as a supervisor, but I'm going to be very glad to know that we have a great man like him on the bench. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Aylor, and I think the first thing I need to do is challenge the gentleman, I believe the school superintendent, that made the statement that I think is very erroneous. And that statement is that he finds it difficult to believe that anyone has had a problem with the gentleman applicant that we've heard most about this afternoon, Mr. Moss. I can tell you for certain that I have had more than one problem with Mr. Moss. Those problems come about as a result of litigating with Mr. Moss over the last 25 years, his entire history here in Mohave County. You know, it is always a problem if you get whooped in court. And I must confess that has occurred in a few of the multiple trials that I've enjoyed having with Steve Moss. Steve has been here about 25 years. He's just a kid compared, I suppose, to me. I've been here for about 48 years in practice. I've enjoyed that practice, and I can tell you that I've truly enjoyed practicing. Sometimes as co-counsel in matters with Steve, far more often on an adversarial basis with him. I've litigated multi-week cases in front of the Superior Court with him as an opponent, an adversary. And one thing I can tell you about him is that his word is good beyond question. You never have to, as an attorney, be concerned that Steve will tell you A today, deny it tomorrow, or make it B tomorrow. I think his ethics are above reproach. I think his love and compassion for humanity as a whole is outstanding. I think his judicial or potential judicial position and thought process and how he comes across to people certainly puts him in a position, based on my 25 years experience with him, as a potential outstanding judge. I have fortunately been honored a couple of times by the state Supreme Court to serve as a judge pro tem on the Arizona Court of Appeals. So I have never served as a Superior Court judge, but I can tell you that in my experience, perhaps the longest continuous practicing civil attorney here in Mohave County, that Steve, I believe, would make truly an outstanding addition to our judiciary. And I don't recall which of the other attorneys in advance of me made mention of the fact that Our current judicial slate is principally comprised of very good judges out of the prosecutor's office, out of the public defender's office primarily. We've got one or two judges that I think the civil bar feels comfortable taking a complex, complicated civil case before. And I think that perhaps is the weakest part of our current judicial panel. And again, I believe that Mr. Moss will go a long way to filling that void. And I think I speak for the majority of our civil bar up here in Mohave County. You know, a lot of people question how any of us could be considered civil bar, but we try our best in that respect. I also think that Steve deserves further accolades, although there have been a tremendous number of them this afternoon, in regard to his community spirit, his community drive, his willingness to give to our community. Mehdi Azami, I think, mentioned a few minutes ago that he had worked with an outfit called the Legacy Foundation. The Legacy Foundation is perhaps one of the largest public charities in the state of Arizona. It is headquartered in Maricopa County. And I have been honored to serve for the past, I think, approximate 10 years as the chairman of that entity. Here in Mohave County, we have issued grants in the range of $20+ million. And a multitude of those have been directed towards the youth of our community. And I can tell you that the board, despite the fact that the majority comes out of Maricopa County, La Paz County, Yavapai County, the board of directors has grown to feel incredibly comfortable with projects that are supported by Steve. I personally have worked with him on a multitude of them. And certainly every one of the people that came before me this afternoon have accurately, in my opinion, indicated his willingness, his dedication, the importance he places on the family relationship, on the youth of our community. I think you would be hard-pressed throughout the state of Arizona to find a better candidate than Steve Moss. We very much appreciate your listening to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is William Condra. I'm an attorney in Bullhead City. I want to thank all of you for making the travel up from Phoenix and enjoying our cool breeze. I'm here to endorse Steve Moss. Professionally, his professional competence is beyond reproach. I've been a colleague and an adversary to Steve. He always knows the facts, he always knows the law, and he's willing to listen to the other side for a resolution. It's an absolute pleasure to have worked with and against Steve Moss. His personal characteristics are beyond reproach. To be a judge or to be a public servant in 2017, we need somebody that's bulletproof, and Steve Moss is the man. I've been in the area for 7 years, and there's never been a time where his character has ever been attacked. He's just a real stand-up guy, and it'd be the government or the governor would pick Steve. Not only would he be picking Steve as a man, but he'd be picking the integrity, and there would be no reproach. But the biggest quality of a public servant is the commitment to the community. And you've heard countless people talk about his commitment. His commitment goes so far that this AYSO, we have a number of underprivileged children that he found scholarships for. So he took 600 individuals doubled the size, and was able to find 100 scholarships for the children that couldn't afford it, which meant those individuals went to the soccer fields 2 or 3 times a week, went to the soccer, and brought families together. He expanded the soccer fields, and he did this on his own. And that commitment that he did would be parlayed, if he is appointed, into a judgeship. He would use the same characteristics as he's done in the past to the future. And one of the funniest stories I heard recently was if the children didn't get good grades on their report card, they couldn't start in the soccer game. So it was only the starters. So it was this mindset. And as soon as I heard this from a third party, I thought to myself, I said, if he gets appointed, it'd be great to be a juvenile court judge. He's already got the report cards. But the bottom line is, all 3 candidates are qualified. But Steve Moss is going to be the quintessential public servant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Smith. I'm the elected Mohave County attorney. I've been here for 29 years and almost 9 months. I started in the county attorney's office back on October 5th of 1987, and when Bill Ekstrom stepped down, he asked that I be appointed, and I've been the elected county attorney for the last 13 and a half years. First thing I want to say is that I really appreciate the time and attention that everybody's paid. One of our candidates talked about listening to people and listening and being engaged, and that was Judge Sipe that talked about that. And I've noticed that all 5 of you have done that with everybody here. And it's quite a long list of people that have been speaking. You've got to be tired. I assume most of you are heading back to Phoenix and probably are ready to get on the road and get home to your families. And the reason I really appreciate it is that I'm good friends with Rick Williams, and Rick asked me to speak in front of the Judicial Commission down in Phoenix recently when he applied for the Court of Appeals. And that's the commission that Judge Bales is the head of. And got up early in the morning, horrible weather, sleet, drove all the way down to Phoenix through the bad weather, got there just in time, and was told that everybody there had a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. So, and one of the candidates from Prescott had 2 people, and they had to apportion the 3 minutes. So I think that everybody here appreciates the amount of time that you've given everyone. I know all 3 candidates. I've practiced a little bit of law in front of Judge Davis. I've done some preliminary hearings in front of her over the years. I have never had a case with Steve Moss. I met him when he was out with Judge Williams years ago at a very well-known movie, The Royal Tenenbaums. Probably nobody's heard of it, but he was there.
I've seen it.
Stars Gene Hackman, we all know him. But I've known Steve for years. He's done an excellent job as a supervisor. I feel a little strange coming here because all the supervisors that showed up today, all of them are supporting Steve, and we still haven't had our budget hearing, and I'm going to be going in front of him shortly. But to be fair, the only person that actually asked me today to come and speak was, in fact, Billy Sipe. I will declare my conflict of interest right off the bat. I've known Billy for 29 and a half years, and we're good friends. We've been friends all that time. We met first as adversaries because he's a criminal defense attorney, and he's the one criminal defense attorney that I'm friends with. We shared a common interest in movies and sports, started watching Super Bowls together, became friends over the years. He is a tremendous adversary in court. He was an excellent litigator. He has conducted, I would say, over 100 jury trials in his career as a lawyer. Most people do not like to try cases. They don't do litigation. They're afraid of it. Billy and I used to bet every year on who would get more trials. Now, we didn't bet cash or do anything illegal, not that I would admit to, but what we would do is bet lunch on whoever would win. And he used to do a lot of misdemeanor trials, so we assigned points. 1 or 2 day trials, you get 1.3 to 5.2, and if it's more than 5, you get 3. And I had to throw that in there because, you know, he was doing a lot of misdemeanor DUI trials. But Billy always tried cases throughout his career, and he's well over 100 jury trials, and he's extremely competitive, zealous advocate, but fair and professional, which is why he got along with the people in our office and had the respect of the county attorney's office over the years, and probably why I was allowed to keep him as a friend. I had a case with him one time involving a child sexual abuse case, and he represented and got to know the family really well. It was a well-known family in the community. And when one of our people that spoke today, I won't name him, Judge Weiss, sentenced his client to prison for 15 years, Billy didn't talk to me for almost 2 months. So he took it very personally. He cares very deeply about his clients. His legal knowledge is terrific. I'm sure that you noticed in listening to the interviews today the difference in the candidates in terms of how they answered the questions. Maybe you found him funny and charming. Maybe you found him a little bit long-winded, and he talked quite a bit. But one thing you had to know is that he obviously knew what he was talking about. He had extensive knowledge of the law, and he's the one who's actually doing the job now. He is a judge, and he's been doing that job for the last couple of years, and he has the respect of both sides of the bench. I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of CLE, that's the mandatory legal education that us lawyers have to get every year, and I've taught a number of courses with him over the years. Court advocacy, trial advocacy, witness preparation, and cross-examination. So I've had the opportunity to see that and to see his firsthand experience and knowledge that he's brought to bear not only on his cases, but imparting that knowledge to the Mohave County Bar. As a judge over the last couple of years, he's earned the respect of both sides. Now, he is a criminal defense lawyer by background. He was bored with that. He'd been doing it for many years, and he wanted a challenge. He wanted to work hard again. And if you ask the judges, you ask the bar around here, who's the hardest working guy in show business, they will all tell you, Billy Sipe. Professional, on time, prepared, zealously represented his clients. He started looking for something else. He wanted a challenge. We started talking. He was planning on coming to our office. In the meantime, he ended up applying for it, and he got the commissioner's spot. He works tirelessly. And the one thing about Billy is that Billy does not have much of an outside life. He's not married. He doesn't have any children. He does have a cat. He spends a lot of time with his cat, but his work is his life. So you have somebody that's completely dedicated. He takes files home every night. He works every weekend. He works 10, 12-hour days without exception, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to work. And I think that if you listened to him during the interview today, and I know everyone was paying attention, you saw the work ethic he had and the desire he had just to do the job. So for him, he's not a politician, as he told you. He's never run for office. He doesn't have anybody here. The law enforcement community supports him. He used to be the attorney for the POA. Chief DeVries was supposed to be here today but wasn't able to make it. And I find myself being the only speaker, again, just shortly before I'm going to be talking to our supervisors about our budget. But I'm proud to have him as a friend, and I would just tell you that if you did choose him, that you will find that he is completely dedicated, hardworking, and somebody who has integrity, that looks at each case and each person as an individual. And that is why he has the respect of both sides of the bar, the prosecution and the defense. And again, I thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to make public comments? Okay, seeing none, I wanted to just let everybody know if you want to submit a written comment, we do have a website portal that you could use, and that web address is azgovernor.gov/judges. So that's azgovernor.gov/judges. www.yavapai.org/judges. So anybody who didn't get an opportunity to make a public comment, you're invited to submit a written recommendation or other comments on our website. Okay. Yes, Senator Donahue.
What is the deadline for comments?
I would say move as quickly as possible, because we're going to try and, if you'd like to by tomorrow, that would be wonderful, but we're going to try and move on this very quickly. Okay? Is there anybody on the panel who would like to make any comments? Okay, seeing none. Again, I want to thank you all for your time and coming here with us. We found this process to be very fulfilling and very helpful in the job that we have ahead of us. I want to thank the candidates, all three of you, for engaging us in this process. We know that this is new and it's a little bit more challenging to be here in the middle of your community. And to be participating in this manner. But thank you. You all should be commended. You all did a wonderful job. And with that, have a great evening, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.